Good to have you going down the road with us. Big day planned for you. State Representative Carla Rose Hansen is going to join us. We'll get a chance to talk to her about the paid family leave bill. Also, Sheriff Jesse Johnner. There's a number of bills out there that make absolutely no sense when it comes to inhibiting law enforcement from doing their job. And we'll visit with the Sheriff of Cass County about those. But first, I'm going to bring in Nick Archuleta. He's the president of North Dakota United. Nick, good to have you coming down the road with us. Thanks for joining us.
It's good to be back, Joel. Thank you.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the legislative season because you represent public employees. I mean, there are a lot of the men and women out there moving the snow right now and sitting in those classrooms during a COVID crisis and trying to make it work. They're yours. That's your members, just so people understand. So legislative sessions, it always seems like are leave you scratching your head when it comes to the very people that work for the state. One of the bills I wanted to talk to you about was 2215. Walk me through it. What does the bill do?
Well, essentially, Joel, what 2215 does is it shortens the amount of time that teachers and school boards have to negotiate their contracts. Now there is no cap on it. And every year, 176 plus school districts, or every other year in most cases, 176 school districts do manage to meet with the teachers and school boards, and they hammer out a contract that serves everybody well. Sometimes they can knock that out in a few meetings. Sometimes it takes a little longer. But typically, very few these cases actually go to impasse where they just can't agree on something, and then a third party that has to come in and help to mediate that, namely the North Dakota Fact-Finding Commission. So by and large, the law that we have right now has been working well. Senate Bill 2215 would upend that. It would further advantage the school districts over the teachers in negotiations.
Who's the sponsor? What's the drive behind this?
Well, the drive behind it is, frankly, in Fargo, the last time they negotiated, it was a rather contentious negotiation, you may remember. It did drag on. I think it took about 13 months from start to finish, something on that order. But there were important issues on the table. Frankly, the school board thought that by taking so long to negotiate that contract with their teachers, there were hard feelings that were formed on both sides. The community was frankly in a little bit of turmoil over it, not understanding just what the issues were that are on the table and why they were contentious. And so they thought that had that time be shrunk, that they would have gotten a contract sooner. I will remind everybody that they did eventually get a contract that they're living by to this day. And that's basically the genesis of this legislation that the school boards asked Senator Scheidle to put in.
When you look at Fargo and the Fargo public school system, it's one of the largest public school systems in the state of North Dakota. And yet it has a neighbor, spitting distance away when it comes to West Fargo. And so I remember following a lot of that. And yes, there were contentious times, which quite frankly, Nick, that's what contract negotiations are supposed to be. You're talking about some tough issues. It's not always going to be kumbaya. And so what the Fargo teachers were bringing to the airways, to my radio show, was really a comparison and contrast between West Fargo schools and Fargo schools. And so in the end, I think that the Fargo School Board really had to take a look at that because, there are teachers that can move easily from one district to the other now.
Yeah, well, that's true, and frankly, teachers want some stability, but more importantly, they want to be able to negotiate the terms and conditions of their employment, because if they have a good contract, that serves both the district well, it serves the teachers well, and it serves the students of that district well, which ultimately is what everybody wants to focus on. And by allowing for fair, even-handed contract negotiations, we are able to do that. And we are able to do that frequently. I think in 2 years, there were 13 out of 176 school districts that went to impasse. So clearly the system we've had in place since 1969 works. And frankly, the system that we have, the Supreme Court has recognized this 3 times in 3 separate court cases, they have said that this isn't a fair system. That school boards already have the upper hand before they even sit down to negotiate, because teachers don't have the same cards dealt to them as school boards do. School boards can always put the trump card down, and that trump card is that they can offer best or the last offer contracts, and then things stop. If it goes to the fact-finding commission, the fact-finding commission might issue an opinion on the contract negotiations and make suggestions, but that's all they are, is suggestions. The school board can either accept what the fact-finders have to say, they can modify what the fact-finders have to say and offer that to teachers, or they can just reject it out of hand. So there is no binding arbitration. So school boards always have the upper hand in negotiations. If this bill were to become law, what would happen is that we would see the state of North Dakota putting their thumb on the scales of fair contract negotiations. That's hardly the light touch of government.
Nick, there's people listening to you right now that say, good, that the school board should have the upper hand, that teachers are just, and I mean it, they're thinking teachers are just the employees and they should be lucky to have a job. They should feel lucky to have a job. What's your message to them?
Well, my message to them is, if they feel the school board should have the upper hand, they should be very happy, because the school board already has the upper hand. Secondly, these are more than just employees. These are individuals who have the responsibility to educate every student that walks, runs, rolls, or is carried through those schoolhouse doors. And to that list, let's add the children learning in hybrid situations or from home due to the COVID pandemic that we are in. It's an incredible responsibility. And our teachers in North Dakota take that responsibility very, very seriously. And we're the only ones charged with that responsibility. So this isn't just a matter of management and employees. We're educating the future of North Dakota. That is an awesome responsibility, and the professionals that are doing it should be treated like professionals, whether it's in the negotiation process or in how they're held in the esteem of the community.
You know, back in my state Senate days, it was a pretty easy question to answer when I'd be at public forums, and there was always that, well, I mean, let's just say it. There was always that ultra-conservative that believed what I just said. And I used to look at them and say, look, go to your school board. Go to your superintendent. Do you think they want to negotiate or have this conversation with every teacher? Or do you believe that they want to just deal with salaries at once and get it done? Because I felt quite confident, and I think it was proved to be right, that the school boards liked having, in many cases, a 2-year contract where they didn't have to deal with it. And so I'm curious what your experience has been, Nick.
Well, I believe that your perception is exactly right. By having a negotiated contract for 2 years, that makes it a lot easier for the school districts to plan in terms of what kind of monies they're going to be spending on personnel costs, and fulfilling the other needs that they have to fulfill. What this bill 2215 would do was it would say that you have to be done by June 1st. Well, in most years, the school districts don't find out what kind of money is coming from the state until the end of April or the first week of May. So those issues that are of prominent importance to teachers and school districts that are revolving around money, you'd have exactly 1 month to negotiate that very hard part of the contract, and that's just not enough time. Now, the bill does say that if both sides agree, they could extend contract negotiations. Well, that's fine. But there is nothing in there that incentivizes school boards to not slow walk to get to June 1st and then just say, well, we're turning it over to the fact finders, whose decision we can ignore.
Yeah. Well, so I'm supposed to call my legislators and tell them to kill 2215. I might have real poor luck with my legislators, but I think there are a lot of reasonable ones out there that people can call. I want to go to House Bill 1369 because this is a bill that I know has hit the radar of ND United. Walk people through what 1369 does.
1369 was a bill introduced by Fargo Representative Tom Kading. And basically what this bill would allow, it's a voucher bill. Okay, so like every voucher bill, regardless of the euphemism that they're wrapped up in, like education savings accounts or tax credit or education tax credits or whatever it is, this is called the Education Empowerment Program. But regardless of the euphemism, the result is the same. Monies that are raised from the public for the support of public schools and public services will now be able to go to, according to this bill, to private tutors, to private schools, and to parochial schools. That's not what the founders of the Constitution had ever thought that would happen. In fact, they speak out about it twice in the Constitution. It would be a complete diversion of public funds to private purposes, and that's not what the state should be in the business of.
I had, again, during my time in the legislature, Dan Ruby from Minot introduced legislation like that. It gets introduced every legislative session, and North Dakota is very proud of its public school system and basically has taken the position that, hey, if you want to send your kids to private school, that's up to you. But if you want to send your kids to private school, you're not taking it out of the public school funds. You're not going to do that because, quite frankly, that money's needed for those individuals and those young people that maybe can't afford to go to a private school. And so Dan Ruby had a bunch of kids and he wanted to send them to private school, and he was trying to get money out of the state. I'll always remember that. It was a self-serving piece of legislation. In the 30, 40 seconds we have left, what are you hearing? Has this bill got a chance?
This bill just this morning got a do not pass on an 11-3 vote out of the House Education Committee. There was a thoughtful debate, and we respect everybody whether they agreed with our position or not, but our position did prevail. We'll see how it does on the floor. But again, this is just another one of those voucher bills. We keep getting them year after year. We've been fortunate so far in that our argument has prevailed, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen forever.
I got to tell you, Nick, we didn't have time today, but I want to talk to you someday in the future about 0-0. And for those individuals who don't know what that means, the governor's budget had a 0% increase in public employee pay one year and a 0 the next year, if I've got the numbers right from his address. That can't be. That means they're going to fall behind big time by the time they get 3 years out. So I appreciate it, Nick. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Joel. Have a great day.
When we get a chance to come back, Carla Rose Hansen joins us. She's a state representative from the northern part of Fargo. We're going to talk to her right after this.
Capital City Restaurant Supply is your one-stop shop for quality restaurant products for the large to small kitchens. Commercial-grade restaurant and bar supplies, limb game processing equipment, refrigeration, dinnerware, and smallware. We sell everything including the kitchen sink from trusted manufacturers for the chef and all of us. Open to the public since 1971, we are veteran-owned and North Dakota proud. Let us take care of your restaurant and home kitchen needs today by visiting us at 1414 Interstate Loop in Bismarck or on the web at capitalcityrestaurantsupply.com.
Heroes and Icons is now Cozy TV. Don't worry, you'll still get your favorite Beck News programming without changing the channel. Real people, real news, Beck News.
Hi, I'm Dennis Haugen, along with my sons Andy and Mike, and we're showing our support for wind energy in North Dakota.
Wind energy has provided farmers like us with a steady stream of income that's not tied to the weather like crops and cattle are.
Another bonus is that wind farm owners are required to maintain the roads leading up to the turbines. Because of that, oftentimes these roads are the best in the county. Wind energy is good for landowners, it's good for the land, it's good for our economy, and it's good for North Dakota.
There's nothing more important than family. And at Prairie Rose Family Dentists, we get it. That's why we have more locations, more dentists, specialists, extended hours, pediatric clinics, and even emergency appointments, so you can always be seen. Book your appointment today at prairierosedentist.com. Prairie Rose Family Dentists. We are family.
40 years ago, Aero Service Team started with one truck and lots of hard work.
Times may have changed, but the hard work that we put in to get your lives back in order after fire, water, and disaster hasn't.
Over the years, we've seen so many families lose their belongings due to water and fire damage. Restoring homes back to the original state has made every hour of hard work well worth it.
Thank you for trusting our family with yours.
When disaster strikes, you only have to make one call. Aero Service Team does it all.
Pub 21, your one stop for fun, drinks, and food. Our spacious facility provides COVID-safe fun for you and all your friends. With nightly bingo and specials, you can be sure there's something to do for everyone. If you're staying in for the night, we've got you covered just across the way with Pub 21 Liquor. We have a wide variety of options, from wine to whiskey and everything in between. Stop in today at 1014 South 12th Street in Bismarck to see what all the buzz is about. You won't be disappointed.
It's good to have you still in the rig as we go down the road. The individual that I get a chance to visit with right now is one that I enjoy every conversation with, and that's State Representative Carla Rose Hansen from North Fargo. Representative Hansen, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thanks for having me, Joel.
Want to get a chance to visit with you about House Bill 1509. I should be saying 0, but it's an old habit. 1509, and what this bill does is apparently deals with family leave. Explain this to folks.
Yeah, actually, the bill is House Bill 1441. I think that might have been the House number, or the bill number from 2 years ago when we first introduced this as a conversation in the North Dakota legislature. So Senator Aaron Oban and I are co-sponsoring a bill that would create an optional paid family leave program in North Dakota. And it's really designed to benefit both workers and families and businesses. We really want it to be a win-win so that families don't have to make that really impossible choice of caring for themselves when they're sick, or caring for a new baby, or caring for a spouse or an elderly parent, and having to choose between that and their paycheck and staying at their job. And too often people are unable to do both, and so they might have to quit their job to take care of this temporary event that is very important at that moment, or they might have to go without pay, and then there's a lot of financial instability that goes along with that. And so we're trying to make this a win-win for both the workers and the families and the businesses, so everyone can come out ahead.
So anything like this costs money. You're going to have to find money to fund it, or at least that's what they're going to hit you with. How are you going to make this work financially?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're getting a $5 million loan from the Legacy Fund earnings. Think of it as startup funds, right? Just with any new program, you need some startup funds. So that will help us establish the program. But the program itself is funded through private contributions through the employer and the employee, or either party. We've really designed this for maximum flexibility because we want people to be able to choose how this works for them. So if just the employee wants to participate, they can contribute the entire amount that's required. Or if the employer thinks, hey, this is an awesome benefit that will really help me attract talent in this tight labor market, they can pay the entire amount, or they can split it in half. So the contributions that create the fund will be private contributions from the employee and or the employer.
So what are we talking about? How much money?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we're designing it is that an individual who would participate would pay 6 cents per $10 of wages. It's kind of hard to do the math, but if you take the average North Dakota worker in North Dakota makes about $50,000 a year. So what that would equal out to is $300 a year for that individual to contribute to the fund. Now, if you split it in half, then worker would pay $150 a year, the business would pay $150 a year. That really amounts to the cost of a cup of coffee a week. Now, would you be willing to, buy one of your employees a cup of coffee every week and be able to support them during what might be a very difficult time in their life? So that's what it amounts to. Now, we've added an incentive for the businesses. So if the employer participates by paying part or all of the employee's contribution, they will get a tax credit. So it's 20% of what they contribute on behalf of that employer. So it's a small amount. In that example of the $50,000 employee, that equals out to about $60 tax credit for that business. But it's an incentive, and it's a small carrot for the business to also participate. But what the business also is getting is improved ability to recruit talent and especially to retain talent, because we know that a lot of people end up just quitting during those times of their life, you know, to care for a new baby or when their parent is dying or some situation like that.
So now that I got my facts straight, and it's House Bill 1441, I want to talk to you about this, because bills like this don't pass. This is progressive. This is something for the future that actually helps employers, and obviously that's been something you've worked on for a long, long time. You represent a lot of people in a higher ed district, for example. But I have to ask you, did you get this to be bipartisan? Do you have support from both sides of the aisle on this?
Yeah, we absolutely do. So House Bill 1441 has several Republicans as co-sponsors, and we know that this is a bipartisan issue. Just nationally, this is a very popular concept. It gets wide support in polling from independents and Republicans, as well as Democrats. People know that this is good for business, and it's a tool that businesses can use. Joel, I used to work at Microsoft, so I worked at Microsoft for 13 years. It provided great compensation for its employees, good pay, good benefits, including leave benefits. Now in Fargo, there's a lot of little offshoots from Microsoft, right? Little startups for technology companies. So those might be companies of 10 employees, 30 employees. Well, they had to compete for the same talent that Microsoft was trying to hire, right? So computer programmers, software engineers, marketing executives. So if you're trying to compete for the same types of employees as that big corporation down the street with fantastic benefits, you're going to have a tough time as a small company. So by participating in a large pool like this state facilitated program could do, really helps them level the playing field and being able to compete for the same level of talent by offering similar benefits as that big corporations up the street. It shouldn't just be a luxury type of benefit. I think all employees in North Dakota should have access to this type of program, and all businesses should be able to use this as a tool as well.
So let me give you a scenario. I've got 20 employees. I'm going to match it. I'm going to pay half. They're going to pay half. We're going to go forward with this, although only 10 of them want to participate. They don't want to throw a couple bucks in the hat to make sure when they need this money, it's there. Does the employer get that opportunity when it comes to their employees? Can they do it individually based upon what the employee says?
Yes, absolutely. We've really designed this to maximize flexibility. So if employer wanted to offer it to their employees as a benefit, think of it like health insurance or disability insurance or vision insurance. It's like, okay, I'm opting into these elements of the benefit package, and the employer could offer it to only those employees who wanted to opt in. I'm also going to add that another aspect of the flexibility allows eligible employees to be considered those in the gig economy. So a lot of our workforce here in North Dakota are people who are independent contractors or sole proprietors. So think of all the people who do the work like freelance writers or consultants or your hairstylists or an Uber driver or someone who sells crafts on Etsy. I mean, it's really a lot of categories, including very high-skilled jobs. And they don't have a traditional employer, and we shouldn't always have to tie benefits like paid leave to that traditional employee-employer relationship. So by passing a state-facilitated optional paid leave program like this, North Dakota can really support the growing gig economy. It's like 30 to 40% of our economy right now are these independent type workers, and it's growing, and more employers expect to employ more of that contract worker instead of like a W-2 worker going forward. So this is a real opportunity to support that part of our economy.
Well, both you and I know many people, and I know you're working on behalf of them, that live paycheck to paycheck. And if you looked at their employer and you looked at the individual themselves and said, you know what, 1 cup of coffee a week, don't drink it, put it into this, I think the program's going to work. So I hope it does. I hope it passes. It's good to hear there's bipartisan support for it. Representative, good. Thank you. Thanks for explaining it, and thanks for coming down the road with us.
Anytime. Thank you, Joel.
When we come back, let's find out what QAnon is. Let's find what their motivation is. Let's find out what drives them. Let's find out what a threat they are to society and all of you as we head down the road.
Jeez, what a mess. Look at that. There's roof stuff everywhere. It's so embarrassing. Ruins the neighborhood. Come on, humans. Let's get this fixed.
Don't let your roof go to the dogs. Call America's Best Contractors for your free estimate.
Need a new woof?
After checking with the rest, go with the best. America's Best Contractors. 258-2412. Online at americasbestcontractorsincorporated.com.
In southwestern and south central North Dakota, on any given day at any given moment, a Dakota Community Bank and Trust customer is logging in or signing on to do their online or mobile banking. We believe that community banking can blend both the past with down-home customer service in-house and the future with modern banking conveniences and technology for our customers anywhere, like here or here, all while honoring our long-standing tradition of community-first oriented banking here at Dakota Community Bank and Trust.
Everybody needs an off season, but our announcers have a tough time slowing down.
Hey, do you mind if I practice a little bit? Right, I don't really think that.
Johnson holds, shoots, he scores! Incredible! For the second time today, Brent has jammed the printer.
Lowry's third caramel roll of the day. That's a bold move.
And he drains one. Blind squirrel finds a nut. And back to normal.
Beck News brings you real people and real news. Every weekday on KNDB, KNDM, and KRDK. Start your evening with the Dr. Duke Show at 4. Take a fresh look at current events with Ladies of Another View at 4:30. Go down the road with Joel at 5:30. Watch No Apologies with Becker at 9. Cap off your night with No Filter with Debbie at 10. Beck News. Real people, real news.
The professionals at Superior Glass provide residential and commercial glass installation and repair services in central and western North Dakota. Superior Glass is your source for stained glass projects, mirrors, windows, touchless and automated entry solutions. Stop by and see us at 3323 East Broadway in Bismarck or call us at 701-258-5600. Superior Glass, where you get superior service for less. Bye for now.
Good to have you still coming down the road. It isn't going to be a long trip, but it's going to be a fun trip. We're going to head to Cass County now. We're going to get a chance to visit with Sheriff Jesse Johnner. Sheriff, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks for having me on today.
I want to promise you we're not speeding, okay? Can we get...
Yeah, you know, you never know with you. You could be out there going a little quick. So.
I'm behaving, at least today. So, Sheriff, there's some pieces of legislation that we asked you to come on and talk about. That as we sit back, I know in radio we were talking about these, and they make absolutely no sense. There's my bias in the beginning. So
Okay.
for those people viewing us right now, they're going to say, okay, well, Heitkamp's just, it's self-serving. But we got a sheriff of the biggest county in the state of North Dakota on to talk to us about it. I want to go over House Bill 1340. Tell people what this bill does.
So 1340 restricts law enforcement from going on to people's private property or private land, as they term it on here. And, you know, there are a few exceptions to that. Basically, what it says is that we wouldn't be able to go on to people's private property or private land unless we were invited on by the landowner or the person leasing the property, or if we had an emergency or exigent circumstance, so to speak. And at face value, when you read the bill, it does, a person looks at it and goes, well, yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. But in the whole totality of all the situations that law enforcement comes across throughout their day-to-day activities and trying to provide that public safety piece to all of our citizens, there are several instances here where this would cause a problem. A couple that I could mention would be conducting just a regular sex offender check that we do routinely. And so in this particular incident, if we wanted to do a sex offender check, we would have to call the sex offender to ask them if we could come onto their property and check on them. And I'm guessing that in some instances, they'd probably tell us no, that they didn't want us there. And so that's not a situation that would meet exigency by any circumstance. And so we literally would not be able to go check on that person. Some other instances I think about are you go down to Arizona for a few months, Joel, and you have someone watching your property, and the person that's watching your property sees some activity over on your property, and they're somewhat afraid to go check on it themselves. Or we drive by when you're gone because we're checking on it or something like that, and now we see something that is suspicious, but it doesn't meet that exigent principle, and so now we would need to call you by phone or get a hold of you somehow and ask you if we could go on and check on it for you. And if we can't get a hold of you, then what do we do at that point? Do we just continue on and not check on it? So those are a couple of circumstances of serving civil process actions, serving orders.
Where's the problem it's trying to fix, Sheriff? I mean, I don't get this.
And that's very much like you said in the beginning. It's a head scratcher. I read it and I'm thinking, man, did something happen where something was that bad that we just don't want to have law enforcement come onto people's property and interact with our citizens? And I'm not sure. I don't know where it's coming from, but certainly it definitely would change how we do law enforcement in the state of North Dakota. And certainly, we want to be able to interact with our citizens, protect them, check into suspicious activity, and this would definitely prohibit that.
Okay, so that is 1340. I think the people that are coming down the road with us know what to do when it comes to 1340, because I can tell you this. If my mom were alone on that farm, which many of the people that are viewing this have that situation, and you feel there's a need to go and check, I want you to go check, okay? So consider this open permission, even if they pass this ridiculous law. I want to talk about House Bill 1486. What does that do?
So 1486 would restrict a dispatch center from pinging an individual's phone. And, we right now we can only do that in emergency situations. That would be someone that finds themselves in a life or death situation, something that's rapidly evolving, where the person might get hurt or could even be potentially killed. Those types of situations is where we would ping a person's phone in that emergency. So some further examples, real life examples, would be we have an elderly gentleman that wanders away that might have a dementia or something like that and has a cell phone on him. We might use that ping to locate that person. Adverse weather conditions in a blizzard where maybe someone gets stuck out in the middle of nowhere and they call for help and they don't know where they are. We would use the pinging of that phone to try to triangulate their location. A 911 hang up where someone might be involved in a physical assault, a domestic, and they call 911 to get law enforcement summons law enforcement assistance. And whoever that person's in the altercation with hangs up the phone on them and they can't call back. That would be a situation where we would use this. So, and any other time that we try to summon any sort of cell phone record from you, we would need to get a search warrant or a subpoena, and we certainly don't disagree with that. We do that on a day-to-day basis in our regular investigations that we do. But these are immediate, rapidly evolving situations where someone needs help. So this would eliminate us from being able to do that. Excuse me.
Yeah, for me personally, one of the examples I would give, and when you talk about pinging, it's, that's a term that's used to, okay, where is that phone? And that's what ping means. But let me throw this at you. I've got a daughter or granddaughter driving down the interstate, and they're calling for help in an area where cell phone service is pretty sparse. They're cutting in, they're cutting out. And the next thing you know, they're sitting there in what's going to be the weather this weekend, which is cold as all get out. And I'm going to want you to know where they are. And if this is a tool you can use to know where they are fast, I mean, this would take away that right, would it not?
Yep, so we wouldn't be able to do it. So I mean, we could still do it, but we would have to apply for a search warrant or in some instances a subpoena to maybe get some of this information to get the search warrant, that type of thing. And then there's a little bit of a turnaround time on there. So that's the piece we'd be missing, is how quick the situation might be unfolding where we need to get law enforcement there immediately. So, you know, it varies on a turnaround time for getting a search warrant to do one of these phone pings. It could be anywhere from an hour to, you know, a couple hours, depending on if it's, you know, during the weekend, how busy the cell phone company is. And so that's why we do this in an emergency situation. We're allowed to do it almost immediately, you know, and that turnaround time is very, very, very short-lived. So, you know, I think of an instance like very much like you're saying, where someone has someone who gets kidnapped. And that's kind of how this bill was initially drafted, not 1486, but when this law came on the books in North Dakota, allowing us to do this was modeled after the Kelsey Smith Act. And that was a young lady who was kidnapped from a mall area, and the parents pleaded with the cell phone company to ping her phone to try to locate her because they knew something was wrong, and the cell phone company wouldn't allow them to do it without getting that search warrant. So.
Okay. Well, this is another example of I don't know what you're worried about. You know, another example. It's a do not pass. Can we safely say that? So call your legislator and let him or her know that the public safety that goes and the non-abuse that's been used is a perfect example of why this bill needs to die. I've only got a couple minutes left. Talk to me about 1123, what this bill does.
1123, I know that one's being worked on quite heavily right now with different amendments, but that's just basically eliminates a bail or bond. So basically, if we were to arrest someone, they would be taken to the jail. Typically, that person then has to post bail to get out of jail. This particular bill, that individuals would no longer have to do that. We would simply take them to the jail, and then they would be released on their own recognizance. And what that means is that they would simply just promise, kind of like just promising to us that they're going to appear at a later time for a court. And you know, in this type of one, this is a type of bill where we look at, you know, how can we, you know, help this person get back on the straight and narrow. We certainly don't want them to sit in jail for forever, but at the same time, you know, bail helps with a couple different things. It helps with paying for those court costs that the person's going to incur. It could help with some restitution for a victim. But my main concern with it right now is the fact that we've been doing this release on their own recognizance because of COVID and the situation that we found ourselves in the Cass County Jail. And we're getting an extreme amount of warrants in right now. I mean, just in January alone, we took in 530 warrants, Joel. 530 warrants. I've got 3,200 outstanding warrants in Cass County alone. 2,000, and those are misdemeanors, just misdemeanors. 2,066 of those are people who have failed to appear. So it's just not working. So that's my concern with it, is that, you know, if we continue down this path, how many people are we going to have running around out there that are not taking care of these warrants?
Well, I'm glad to hear you're working on it. There's something there to talk about on this.
Yeah, and that one, you know what? For the biggest thing for me on this one is let's get people at the table and let's see what benefits everyone, because there's victims in this thing, and I, as the sheriff, I want to make sure that we get justice for victims in this as well.
Sheriff Johnner, always good to talk to you. I want to repeat, 1340, kill that bill, call your legislators. House Bill 1486, kill that bill, call your legislators, and stay out of the way of 1123, and let's see what can get produced, and we'll determine at another day whether or not the bill needs to be passed or killed. So, Sheriff Jesse Johnner, thank you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Joe. Yep, thank you.
When we come back, Lori Konish is going to join us. Lori is with CNBC. She's a financial reporter, and we're going to get a chance to talk to her about stimulus and what's going on in our federal government. So stick around. Let's keep going down the road together.
Howdy folks, it's the County Cafe. I reckon it's time you're due for a hearty meal. So saddle up for the day with one of our Hay-Boston breakfast homemade soups. Fill your grill at our salad bar, sink your teeth into our famous County Line burger and barbecue ribs. Top it off with spool-rattling power with a calm roll that's sure to put a smile on even the toughest outlaws. Yeah. Shake the dirt off the boots each night and warm up with the game. Tell them about it, Stacy.
I can't wait to see you at the county line.
Since opening in Hebron in 1940, Dakota Community Bank and Trust has been your hometown bank. Our mission has been to provide modern banking convenience with old-fashioned hometown service. We've grown with the communities we serve through year-round events, countless sponsorships, and nearly 7,000 hours of volunteering each year. Learn more about our 80-year history at dakotacommunitybank.com.
Capital City Restaurant Supply is your one-stop shop for quality restaurant products for the large to small kitchens. Commercial-grade restaurant and bar supplies, limb game processing equipment, refrigeration, dinnerware, and smallware. We sell everything including the kitchen sink for trusted manufacturers for the chef and all of us. Open to the public since 1971, we are veteran-owned and North Dakota proud. Let us take care of your restaurant and home kitchen needs today by visiting us at 1414 Interstate Loop in Bismarck or on the web at capitalcityrestaurantsupply.com.
Jeez, what a mess. Look at that. There's roof stuff everywhere. It's so embarrassing. Ruins the neighborhood. Come on, humans. Let's get this fixed.
Don't let your roof go to the dogs. Call America's Best Contractors for your free estimate.
Need a new woof?
After checking with the rest, go with the best. America's Best Contractors. 258-2412. Online at americasbestcontractorsincorporated.com.
Beck News brings you real people and real news. Every weekday on KNDB, KNDM, and KRDK. Start your evening with the Dr. Duke Show at 4. Take a fresh look at current events with Ladies of Another View at 4:30. Go down the road with Joel at 5:30. Watch No Apologies with Becker at 9. Cap off your night with No Filter with Debbie at 10. Beck News. Real people, real news.
It's good to have you still on the trip. Obviously, what's playing out on a national scale right now is the stimulus bill. What to do, how to do it. There's been a lot of negotiations. A bipartisan group of senators have gone to the White House and expressed their views on what should happen. I think that everyone who thinks that the Democrats are going to vote in one block is being incredibly naive, and I think they might be a little naive that Republicans are going to vote in just one block, but we'll get into that. The biggest thing is the stimulus check that would be going out to the people that qualify for it. Lori Konish is with CNBC. She's a personal finance reporter, and I want to talk to her. Lori, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I think a lot of people out there who don't and won't get a stimulus check so you can jumpstart the economy and get out there and spend it. I don't think they realize that the $600 hasn't gone out yet. Am I right or am I wrong about that?
So it has gone out for people who are lucky enough to have their information up to date with the IRS through direct deposit or the mail. However, there's a lot of people who are still waiting for that money. The government really started deploying the money 2 days after the legislation was passed in late December, and then more than 100 million payments went out in the early days of January. But the IRS is working on also, just turning its attention to the next tax season. So they sort of set a January 15th deadline for getting those payments out. And then if you didn't receive it by then, their advice is really to file for a tax credit when you file your taxes this spring.
Interesting. Describe to people who qualifies, because I think that there's a different idea out there of who does and who doesn't, and know that you're speaking to, the farm and ranch country. I mean, who qualifies for this stimulus check?
A lot of it is based on income thresholds. So similar to the first checks that went out last spring, it's up to $75,000 for individuals, up to $150,000 for people who are married and filed jointly. The payments phase out for income above those levels, and eventually, you don't qualify at all. But it's also, there's other restrictions as well. Say, if you have valid social security number, or if your dependents are under 17, they would qualify. So there are other restrictions as well that I think have confused some people as to whether they're eligible or not. The IRS does have a handy, FAQ on its website to try to help people sort through their personal situations and evaluate whether they're eligible for the money or not.
So this debate happened before. I mean, the stimulus checks had gone out before. So what was the criteria then? Is it the same criteria now?
Yeah, it's mostly the same criteria now for the $600 checks. What happens now, though, is $600 is phasing out at the same rate as the $1,200, but because it's a lower payment, it's the caps for how many people would receive a reduced payment are lower. What they're looking at with the payments that they're talking about now on the Hill, they would make adult dependents eligible as well, which is a big deal for people who have, children who are 17 and over, or, are caring for someone with a disability who is a dependent. They would also then be eligible for the money provided this passes.
So Lori, did it work the first time? I mean, I know that the motivation behind it was two parts. I mean, there were a lot of people that fit in that category that weren't getting paid, that had their pay cut back because of COVID, and there was an economy that was slowing down. And so it begs the question, because here we are talking about it again, and we'll get into what the stimulus bill is being debated, but did it work last time?
So last time, I think it really, it did work for those people who maybe had delayed unemployment benefits and needed money right away until those kicked in. We did see increased consumer spending at the same time. So that really helped to boost the economy last spring. I think we're still looking at evidence of what's happening with the payments that just went out and seeing what kind of perk, people can see in terms of their personal income, or whether that will boost spending overall. But yes, there's the feeling that it could be more targeted. And that's something that they're debating on the Hill is, who really needs the money, and how can we better get it to people who truly, truly need more money right now.
So I want to talk about the negotiations, because clearly that's your lead on a lot of the stories that CNBC covers, is where these negotiations are. That bipartisan group that went to the White House, clearly stating that this overall stimulus package needed to be reined in, that it didn't need to be as high as what the Biden administration felt it should be, and yet they're holding ground on this. And so the additional dollars, I believe the Biden administration wants it to be $2,000, versus just 600 or beyond. So an additional $1,400. So where are we at in all of that? I mean, CNBC covers this stuff from top to bottom. I mean, you do such a great job. Where's this going to end up? Do you have any inside information?
Well, so this is really, one of the things that we're watching as this new administration and new leadership on the Hill comes together, because it's going to signal, how the dynamics will play out for the next couple of years at least. But what we're seeing is now we have this Democratic majority in the Senate, in the House, and the White House. And the feeling is, on that side, that the stimulus package that went through in late December didn't provide enough help for the economy at this time. Now, on the other side, Republicans want, something that's a little more targeted, a little more conservative. What we're running into is watching the economic indicators. What's happening with the vaccine? How quickly could the economy recover? And so the Democrats have the opportunity to maybe pass this by reconciliation with just a simple majority. At his heart, experts have said to me, Biden is a bipartisan guy. He likes to, get consensus from both sides. But his feelings, according to reports today, are that, he really thinks that what the lawmakers brought to him in the meeting earlier this week was too small.
And I have to say this, where you're spot on, right, as, during all of this, is it's going to define the presidency in terms of what a lot of the country is looking at. Can we actually have governance now? Can we bring people in and negotiate a deal? Can we hear from both sides? There's lots of ways to define unity, and respecting both sides of the political aisle is a good way to start on that. Lori, last $10 in your wallet. Joe Biden going to get his way, or is it going to be less?
It looks like I think he will get something closer to his way based on having the leadership behind him, having this ability to do reconciliation, and also really facing this unemployment, the expanded federal unemployment benefits expiration in March. We're coming up on that key deadline, and I think that, he's really going to push for something more at this time.
Lori, keep doing what you do at CNBC. The bipartisan fashion that you do it in, and the just straight information and the focus on what you're focused on is perfect. Love the network. Please keep doing what you're doing, and thanks for coming down the road with us.
Thank you so much.
When we come back, we're going to have some final thoughts. We're going to get a chance to talk about the North Dakota legislative session. Some of the most ridiculous bills you've ever seen have been introduced. Are they going to get killed? We'll talk about it as we head down the road.
There's nothing more important than family. And at Prairie Rose Family Dentists, we get it. That's why we have more locations, more dentists, specialists, extended hours, pediatric clinics, and even emergency appointments, so you can always be seen. Book your appointment today at prairierosedentist.com. Prairie Rose Family Dentists. We are family.
Hi, I'm Dennis Haugen, along with my sons Andy and Mike, and we're showing our support for wind energy in North Dakota.
Wind energy has provided farmers like us with a steady stream of income that's not tied to the weather like crops and cattle are.
Another bonus is that wind farm owners are required to maintain the roads leading up to the turbines. Because of that, oftentimes these roads are the best in the county. Wind energy is good for landowners, it's good for the land, it's good for our economy, and it's good for North Dakota.
40 years ago, Aero Service Team started with one truck and lots of hard work.
Times may have changed, but the hard work that we put in to get your lives back in order after fire, water, and disaster hasn't.
Over the years, we've seen so many families lose their belongings due to water and fire damage. Restoring homes back to the original state has made every hour of hard work well worth it.
Thank you for trusting our family with yours.
When disaster strikes, you only have to make one call. Aero Service Team does it all.
Rush hour traffic in North Dakota, it's almost unheard of, Noah.
I'm speechless. It's something you just don't see around here, especially at this hour of the day.
Brian, can you say anything from your perspective?
Guys, I can. All this traffic is because some doofus drove off the road.
Doofus? Well, let's hope you can him out of there. No. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
All right, great job.
Yeah, that went very well.
The professionals at Superior Glass provide residential and commercial glass installation and repair services in central and western North Dakota. Superior Glass is your source for stained glass projects, mirrors, windows, touchless and automated entry solutions. Stop by and see us at 3323 East Broadway in Bismarck or call us at 701-258-5600. Superior Glass, where you get superior service for less. Bye for now.
Now is the best time to plan for your 2021 farm equipment needs. North Dakota-based Summers Manufacturing is currently offering early order savings. Take advantage of big savings on North America's broadest tillage line, including the Super Coulter Samurai and the innovative VRT Renegade, as well as the best built, best backed land rollers in the industry. Talk to your Summers dealer today or go to summersmfg.com to learn more about early order savings available on all Summers equipment.
Okay, it's the last couple miles as we head down the road together. Want to talk about the North Dakota legislative session. And really, I think people at times don't understand how it works. So, spent 14 years of my life there, so I have a pretty good idea of how the legislature works. Understand this, any fool can put in a bill. In North Dakota, every bill gets a hearing. So unless you withdraw the bill, the sponsor themselves, it's going to get a hearing. And it's going to get a vote on the floor, up or down. That's the beauty of it. That's something I totally respect about it. But some of these bills are so idiotic. So let's ask ourselves, why? Why would anyone introduce legislation as foolish and as ridiculous as what some of this legislation is? I'll give you an example of why I believe it is. It's because they want to endear themselves to groups that give them money. It sounds like they're corrupt. Well, you know what? When Jim Casper from South Fargo introduces legislation that makes North Dakota Las Vegas, you know what that's about? That's about people donating money. That's about free trips here and there. That's about the ability to just take advantage of legislation and say, hey, I put that bill in. It's not my fault it didn't pass. So there's plenty of that. There's a point in the legislative session called crossover, which means that all of the House bills that pass go to the Senate. All the Senate bills that pass the Senate chamber go to the House. Usually the most idiotic bills that are introduced are dead by crossover. And now we're down to the serious work of actually what could happen during this legislative session where things can become law. And I'll tell you what, let's all hope, let's cross our fingers that some of this legislation we're talking about as we go down the road doesn't make it through crossover. Folks, it's been good riding with you.